Okay, hi. I'm Summer. I am going to mostly actually talk about the editorial side of BuzzFeed. I just recently switched to the creative team to help out the business side. But for the last year and a half, I've been on the editorial team focused entirely on distributed content. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about how BuzzFeed got there, and then some of the things that we learned from making distributed content. So I want to start by saying I'm in a room full of people who are journalists and who particularly mostly come from a journalism background. I come from the internet. I was homeschooled in Austin, Texas, and my entire childhood and education and sort of growth and everything that I was interested in was actually whatever was new on the internet. And so for me, this idea that that this is changing, that's been my life since I was 14. I was active on LiveJournal, and then it was Friendster, and then it was any social network. And when I started at BuzzFeed was actually when I first became sort of exposed to the world of journalism, and started thinking about how these two worlds could intersect. But for a lot of people, and particularly for digital media organizations, the internet looked like this. This is the BuzzFeed homepage in 2006. It is comprised of a list of links that were comprised of lists of more links to other web pages to highlight what was buzzing on the internet, like, the Borat movie. For most people now, the internet is more like this. It's on their phones. It's seen through a series of apps. When we talk about mobile, we see, obviously a huge amount of our traffic comes from mobile and social, but it's really not even that anymore, as I think most of you guys know. It's not mobile web. It's not traffic to BuzzFeed.com on a web browser. It's within apps. So on Instagram, the BuzzFeed app, messaging apps, Tumblr, etc. Obviously Facebook. So for BuzzFeed, we don't think of social media, anymore as brand building or simply audience development to lead to our website. For us, it is where our work is published, and we've actually kind of switched to referring to our social media team as publishers, and thinking of that as the publishing layer of BuzzFeed. And when we started thinking about this, it was about a year and a half ago, and I was on BuzzFeed's team. I had been really involved in quizzes, which were the big thing 2.5, 3 years ago, and was always really interested in original content. And so I started talking to Jonah and Ben about how we would address this change and how we think of distribution. And we decided to sort of create a SWAT team of creative people to make distributed content and to not think about BuzzFeed.com at all. And we've been doing that for a year and a half. We've actually recently reintegrated that into our entire editorial operation and started really thinking about how it relates to news. And so the examples I'm going to give, I'll just warn you, are mostly focused on the entertainment side. But I included some more somewhat journalistic things. But I think it's really interesting because to me, what BuzzFeed is at its core is a testing center. We are focused on impact, whether that's entertainment or news. It's always our core, and we are very willing to adapt. We really are kind of that, we're gonna find the audience wherever they are, and we'll figure the rest out later. We're still kind of there in a way. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we want to reach them in a deep way, and we want them to engage with our content. If it's the great investigative journalism team led by Mark Schoops, we want to change laws and we want to inform people. If it's our comics artists, we want to make people laugh and bring them closer to their friends. Whatever it is, it's always impact, and the way that we can do that is by following people where they are. And so that's what we do. One thing that we learned, so the rest of this, I'm just going to focus on a few things we learned that sort of surprised me. One thing we learned early on was that we could do more by actually not being very bespoke about platforms, by really focusing on the core of something that we did and translating it to as many different platforms as we could. And what we found was that the best content performed well on every single platform. The big hits were big hits on Facebook, they were big hits on Tumblr, they were big hits on Instagram. So our comics, we started doing BuzzFeed comics. I hired original artists who are staff illustrators, which if you know anyone who goes to art school is like a very big deal. They get to draw all day. And when we had hits, they would be hits on every single platform. And so this was one that really connected with people and early on was big everywhere. And that, you know, the key to that, and we sort of mentioned earlier talking about how you prepare students and think about the future of journalism. The key to that is knowing how to format for those platforms, having people who are really experts on adapting. So this was an example of a recipe. I'm sure you guys have seen the successful food videos that we do on Facebook. Obviously, it was huge on Facebook, but we also did a cut down, a 15-second version for Instagram, and did an image-based version for Pinterest that led to a BuzzFeed post where you could read the recipe. Oh yeah, I won't play the whole thing, but it's pretty fun, yeah. So speaking of sort of the news side, one thing that I really love about BuzzFeed is that we have creative people writing stories. We have creative people making art. We have creative people doing journalism. But we also try to be creative about how we distribute and really apply that same like fun testing and learning to thinking about distribution. So Andrew Kaczynski is a BuzzFeed staffer who I've been there 4 years, and he was started around the same time as me, so we're old school in BuzzFeed years. And he has, particularly in this election cycle, sort of carved out this role of doing basically oppo research within BuzzFeed. So really digging into the archives of things that candidates have said. We've broken some great stories with his team. And this was an example where he went through and listened to the hours and hours of tape of Donald Trump appearing on Howard Stern's show and dug out some of the most interesting quotes. And this post was on BuzzFeed.com. It did very well for us, almost 1 million views. We also turned it into a Facebook video, which got over 57 million views. The Facebook video was framed as not just, you know, these are some gross things Donald Trump said, but our video team looked at it and said, let's take some of the things Obama has said about women and raising his daughters and contrast those to some of these quotes from Donald Trump on Howard Stern. And so you can see almost 1 million shares, which is intense. We also did a comic version that we distributed on Tumblr, Twitter, and other visual platforms. If Winnie the Pooh said things that Donald Trump said. And I think this is a really good example. Like we did this, we wanted to expose that Donald Trump had said these sort of disgusting things about women, and I think we were able to reach a lot more people by thinking about distribution and how we could distribute that information in a like really creative, weird way, thanks to some of these weirdos that work at BuzzFeed. Really quick, like another thing that we learned is that the best way that we could, and you know, other people spoke about this as well, like these platforms, it's really just about testing, and you learn a lot about your audience and you learn about what works by trying a lot of different things and kind of honing in on what people respond to. So when Drake was blowing up, the Hotline Bling video came out a few months ago. I told my team, like, let's just make as much Drake content as possible. Oh, these videos are not playing. I'm just gonna speed through this. There we go. So, We did a bunch of different things and probably made 25, 30 pieces of Drake Hotline Bling content. And this was the big hit. And so again, this just, I just want to hone in on that point that we find that the best quality things perform well on each platform. So this idea that like distributed changes everything and social changes everything, we found that people respond whether it's this video or a great story, they respond to the same things no matter what platform they're on. And testing and learning also pays dividends. We've been doing Facebook Live videos since they first started it, really focusing on it, thinking like, this is a fun, exciting new thing. People seem interested in it. Let's try as many things as possible. We learned a lot in those few months. I think a lot of people saw the watermelon video. I'm not even explaining the watermelon video. I'm assuming everyone watched the watermelon. I think that a lot of people saw the watermelon video as kind of like a random, like crazy thing. And it was actually the result of a lot of stuff we learned from doing Facebook Live video. We learned that people really like a strong visual element that they can immediately tune into. We had a pretty successful video of a guy popping bubble wrap for 30 minutes. But the problem with that video was that there was no thing to stick around to the end. And so we were like, oh, people need something to stick around for. And we also found that evenings worked well and Fridays worked well, and all of that led to the watermelon. It wasn't just a lucky. I'm running out of time, so I switch through some stuff. But just to what we've learned, we think of social as publishing. We find that adaptation is the best way to stretch our resources. There's going to be, I think, in this panel discussion, a lot of discussion about how a smaller, scrappier organization can do these things. And to me, the answer is to really hone in and figure out how to adapt across platforms. Thinking about distribution creatively, not just as a box you check. Don't just say how do we put this exact story somewhere else, but think what's native. Trying a lot of variations on a theme, testing and learning. Yeah, that's me. That's BuzzFeed.